production fee was paid to WBBZ-TV from Buffalo Healthy Living magazine for this special presentation. I'm John DeSciullo. In January 2023, early into a Monday night football game, millions of viewers were stunned as they witnessed Buffalo Bill Damar Hamlin, number 3, collapse on the field in real time due to cardiac arrest. Hamlin had tackled a Cincinnati Bengals receiver whose shoulder collided with Hamlin's chest. Hamlin stood up but collapsed seconds later. His survival was completely dependent upon the heroic efforts of the medical staff who attended to him directly on the field. Cardiac arrest causes close to 450,000 deaths in the U.S. each year and is the cause of roughly half of the deaths linked with heart attack and stroke. The American Heart Association and Stroke Statistics 2022 update calls cardiac arrest a public health crisis. Now, here is a stunning statistic. There are more than 356,000 out-of-hospital cardiac arrests annually in the United States, and nearly 90% are fatal. Nearly 1,000 people of all ages experience a cardiac arrest every day, and only 10% of them survive. 37.1% of cardiac arrest incidents are witnessed by lay people. A little over 12% are witnessed by 9/11 responders, and about 50% of cases are not witnessed by anyone. So the prevalence of CPR training is very important, and it's only 18% of the population, although 65% of the people say they've had training at some point. Now, very few lay people, maybe about 6%, were able to use an automated external defibrillator. We're going to call it an AED. And only about 1% used the AED effectively. So there's a lot to learn, which is why the following special presentation of your Hometown Health Connection Community Conversation focuses on understanding cardiac arrest, the importance of CPR, and the life-saving mission that these machines and these procedures will have for you. And you're going to see the world's first mobile ECMO truck, which is providing specialized care for cardiac arrest patients, ordinarily only delivered in hospitals. Our show is presented here on WBBZ in partnership with Buffalo Healthy Living magazine. Let's meet our guests. Annette Adamczak is a CPR lead instructor and founder of the Emily Rose Foundation, Incorporated. Annette's daughter, Emily Rose, lost her life to cardiac arrest at the age of 14 in 2009 at a soccer practice. Dr. Vijay Iyer is an interventional cardiologist at Great Lakes Cardiovascular and director of Complex Valve Clinic and Structural Heart Interventions at Buffalo General Medical Center and Gates Vascular. His clinical practice includes general cardiology, interventional cardiology, and complex valvular heart diseases. Dr. Iyer has performed more than 2,000 transcatheter aortic valve replacement surgeries and is involved in research for many national clinical trials. Dr. Kenneth Snyder welcomes back to the show. He's a vice president at physician quality at Kaleida Health, a neurosurgery professor at University at Buffalo Jacobs School of Medicine and Biomedical Sciences, and a neurosurgeon with UBNS Neurosurgery. He has authored numerous publications and is trained in all general neurosurgical procedures, including brain tumor, spine, and peripheral nerve surgery. And Dr. Demetri Yannopoulos is an interventional cardiologist who cares for adult patients at University of Minnesota Health Clinics and Surgery Center, the University of Minnesota Medical Center, East Bank Hospital, and University of Minnesota Health Heart Care in Fridley. He is a professor of medicine in the cardiovascular division at the University of Minnesota Medical School and has authored numerous publications. He's also at the forefront in helping to make the world's first life-saving ECMO truck a reality. We'll learn about that in a little bit, and he'll join us through Zoom technology. So part 2 of our series on this very important topic continues. Dr. Iyer, let's talk about learning CPR. We saw in the last program a little demonstration of it. You're passionate about this, as is Annette, that people need to learn this. Who can learn this, and how difficult is it?
CPR is a relatively simple skill, which almost anybody can be taught. Anybody who has enough muscle strength to be able to push a chest down should be able to do this. I believe that almost any adult individual or even a juvenile, anybody above the age of 14. We have seen stories of 14 and 15-year-olds in the community who have done CPR successfully on their parents or relatives. So I don't think there's any limitation on who can learn CPR. I think the key is to teach it widely, broadly, effectively, and reinforce that treatment or that education in some sort of a cyclical pattern, because as we know, a skill is best sustained when it is taught multiple times or people get to practice it multiple times.
And just from learning a little bit with Annette, I felt, even on a mannequin, I felt panicked. You know, I'm not going to do the right thing. And I would suspect, Dr. Iyer, that you would want to make sure that people keep their wits about them when they do this, because if you do it wrong, it's not going to work. Or if you have to deliver, you have to get through it. And should it be taught as a mandate in every school, in every workplace, in every corporate setting, in every hospital?
I strongly believe that it should be. There are many states in the United States that require CPR training as a prerequisite for high school graduation, and I think that should be broadened to every state. We know that there are many states that require the presence of an AED in schools and in public places. I believe that should be universal and everybody should be taught on the use of an AED. I don't see any reason why this is a basic public health skill that we cannot impart to individuals. And I believe that every individual who graduates high school should have this as a basic skill.
Annette, when you teach CPR, how do the young people embrace it?
Well, we set it up in the phys ed class, and the kids really enjoy the program. So we start with a training session in a 42-minute period. We can train upwards of 90 students, and at the same time, we're training the phys ed teachers. So the goal is to hopefully have them redo the training every year, so these kids are getting it 4 times before they graduate. So they do have that, you know, training multiple times.
Yeah. They may never use it, but they have the
They
training.
may not, but in the first couple of years that I did the training within the schools, from 2010 to 2014, 2015, we had kids that would walk up to me in an open place, like in a mall or in a, you know, grocery store. Hey, aren't you the lady that taught us how to do CPR? And it's, you know, pushed down 2 inches deep and 100 beats a minute, you know, like staying alive. But these kids retained that and they knew it. And what better way to give that gift of saving a life to your kids when they can actually use it on a loved one?
And they may have saved lives and you may not even know about it.
Right.
Dr. Snyder, joining us on Zoom, your expertise, let's talk about stroke care, neurosurgery, and the brain a little bit. You know, you have a master's in public health from Johns Hopkins University, and this is important, focusing on CPR as a public health crisis, and also for attending to patients who experience a cardiac arrest. But for what length of time does an individual who survives cardiac arrest need to be monitored for functional impairments or cognitive defects, and are there therapies that you use for recovery, and what do they consist of?
After the first 72 hours after a major cardiac arrest, brain injury accounts for 80% of the death or morbidity associated with that individual. And so that means beyond that first recognition of we have got to get blood supply to this brain, it then turns to minimizing the secondary effects of brain injury that can occur. And that involves very similar things to what we do in research for stroke. It involves and looks at minimization of fevers, keeping normotensive. It involves optimization of blood supply to the demand of the brain. If you are delivering too high of blood pressures, you can get swelling, and intracranial pressure increases are often the cause of mortality or further damage to the brain. It involves optimization of oxygen delivery, not delivering too much oxygenation, not delivering too little. It involves ensuring CO2 or carbon dioxide that we breathe out mildly increases but doesn't increase dramatically, or we can have pressure issues. It also involves ensuring that seizure activity isn't occurring in an injury phase, because that would increase demand and cause further injury. And so many of the things that we've learned about optimization of blood supply to the brain for stroke, and the tools that we've helped develop for the treatment of stroke that can actually look at regional blood supply and blood volume, can help us optimize that care. I think one thing, though, that's most important, an awake individual that is not in sedation, their brain has an incredible tool set to auto-optimize its own blood supply. The brain has an amazing ability of dilating in regions where it needs blood. When a patient is intubated and out under sedation, those regulatory capabilities aren't there. And it's now up to the team members that are caring for that individual to work on that optimization. And so it's that skill set that helps us try and minimize the injury. Again, the key message I'm delivering, those first minutes, 30 minutes, those first hours of CPR are very critical, because if the tissue's damaged, there isn't anything that we're going to be able to do to bring that back. But if we're in this region of haven't irreversibly damaged tissue, then it's all about optimization of these secondary parameters to optimize that brain function.
So Dr. Snyder, let me understand. If someone has a cardiac arrest and there's an issue that's happening, is that considered a stroke? Would a stroke maybe follow a cardiac arrest? Is it something that one would lead to the next?
Yeah, stroke is a difficult term. Stroke can involve any damage to brain tissue and the tissue itself, and it can occur because of either loss of blood supply to regions of brain, and that tissue dies off, and that's called an ischemic stroke. You can also have stroke where there's hemorrhagic or bleeding within tissue, within the brain substance itself, and it actually suffocates off further blood supply, and that's also called a stroke. So any insult that's going to lead to loss of brain tissue is how we use the term stroke. If you have loss of blood supply for a large period of time to the brain, areas at risk within it can develop ischemic strokes, complete irreversible loss of tissue. When you reperfuse brain that's been injured, it could actually bleed or cause further injury. And so again, the term is complicated, but yes, associated with cardiac arrest, when we talk about post-cardiac arrest brain injury, we're talking about usually an ischemic or potentially hemorrhagic stroke event that may have occurred secondarily.
Dr. Yannopoulos is joining us from Minnesota, Minneapolis specifically. When we spoke to you in our last program, we talked about some reasons why people need to be trained, obviously, and get emergency situations. When did you learn CPR, and have you used it on a patient with the AED?
Excellent question. So, most of us learn CPR in medical school. Unfortunately, when we were medical students, which is unfortunately a little while ago now, was not mandatory for people to learn CPR in high school. And so I learned CPR in classes during my medical school years. Have I performed CPR? I think I probably perform CPR more than anybody else on this planet, because that's what I do as part of full-time of my job. I end up seeing almost every day patients that require CPR, and I take over their care. And physically, CPR is very demanding for people that actually perform CPR, and somebody who exercises regularly. I would say to maintain good quality CPR for a period of 4, 5, 6 minutes, it's a very, very difficult workout. And that's why, most of us are required to change every couple of minutes when we do CPR, just because it's very physically demanding, and most people cannot sustain good quality of CPR for more than 2 or 3 minutes. So kind of running like a little bit of a 100-yard dash kind of situation. Very demanding. And the other thing, it's very uncomfortable for people to perform CPR is because it's done in a position that you are not comfortable. You are kneeling on your knees, and you're using a lot of your back muscles to push your body up and down. And now those are positions that are very uncomfortable for many people, and actually quite painful for people that have back pains or knee pains or any other musculoskeletal problem. So the AEDs, which is a very useful tool, is also something that most of the people have never seen or used. And this is why training is so important in resuscitation and CPR, because a lot of people need to know it, and most of us will never use it in our lives. Even paramedics that respond to emergencies all the time, very few times they do more than 1 or 2 cardiac arrests per year per group of paramedics that they go around. Because although about 400,000 people die every year, that is not a common event in a daily occurrence that people know about.
Let's talk about the AED for a minute. Dr. Iyer, we saw an example of it. We'll show some images of what it is. And I've seen images on television, different dramas and medical dramas, where, like a plate is put on somebody's chest. This is not that. But what is the difference between the two, and can you describe that?
What we typically see in these medical dramas are what we call paddles, the things that
Paddles, yes.
exist in hospitals, which is a defibrillator. But the AED device comes with patches. It comes with very simple instructions, which I believe is at the level for middle school level education, where people can read and just follow the instructions. It really tells you to go step by step on what to do. The AED also has voice commands that tell you what to do next. For example, it tells you what to put the patches on. It'll tell you what plugs to turn on, and it'll tell you when to press a button to shock somebody or not to shock somebody. And it'll also tell you when to continue doing CPR. So the AED really is sort of, think of it as Annette standing next to you, telling you exactly what to do, and really those instructions coming out of a box. That's really what an AED is.
And if an AED is not available, obviously you want to continue with the CPR.
Absolutely. I think within the algorithm of the ACLS, as we call it, one of the things is you start CPR, you got to find out, make sure you dispatch for 911, and you continue, you get the AED and you start to follow the instructions. So getting the entire team involved, meaning the emergency medical personnel, is a part and parcel of your training in doing BLS or ACLS.
It seems, as a layperson, very intimidating to hear the term AED, but you shouldn't be intimidated. If you're going to learn this practice and you're going to learn how to do it, you're going to not, because that's a part of it too. You can't panic and not use the machine properly.
We see fire hoses in different buildings and hydrants, and there are things to break in and start sprinklers that go on. I think of that as just an extension tool that every one of us can use to save a life. In your entire lifetime, if you never get to do it, you're lucky. If you get to do it once, you're lucky because you got to save somebody's life.
Yeah.
And that's a great. How often can you say that I learned a skill as a teenager that I got to use, to save somebody's life?
And if somebody, and that you had the situation with your daughter who had that situation right on the field, and it happened just like that with Damar Hamlin. It happened just like that. And Dr. Snyder, with Damar Hamlin, were you watching the game that night, that Monday Night Football game?
I was.
When you saw that, and I was watching with my daughter, what was your first reaction when you saw him go down?
Yeah, I was worried and praying for him and his family, and blessed and thankful that the care team around them was the care team that they were. The therapists, medical doctors, and physicians that are trained and actually practice these events. But the NFL has done a spectacular job of training and practicing for these events every year and builds it into their routine. So I was just praying that all of the practice that all of them had gone through was able to translate to the miracle that it did.
And Annette, in your situation, your daughter went down on the soccer field, and it was a similar situation where she went down very quickly.
Right.
Different situation, obviously, without medical teams to the degree that we saw with Damar Hamlin. How long did it take for the EMS team to make it there?
By the time we realized that we needed to get 911 called and have the paramedics or the first responders there, it was probably 10 minutes. What normally would have been a 20-minute drive to the closest hospital, they made in 8 minutes. So in under 20 minutes, we were at the hospital and they were doing everything that they could. But because nothing had been started for those first, 10 minutes, her outlook was not good at all.
Certainly a contrast here in
Absolutely.
outcomes. Tell us about the foundation, the Emily Rose Foundation.
The Emily Rose Foundation was set up to enable us to raise funds to put AEDs out on local sports fields that didn't have them, and to promote training of high school students in the community so that we could give back and give that life-saving skill so that no other family had to lose a loved one.
How much is an AED unit?
10 years ago, they were about $1,500. Depends on how many bells and whistles you want, but there are grants out there for, businesses or churches or schools to get them. All you have to do is look a little bit.
Yeah. Where can we find out? We'll actually, you know what? We're going to have information on the Emily Rose Foundation at the end of the show, so we'll make sure that people know about that. Dr. Yannopoulos, we have just a few minutes left, and I want to get to everybody real quick. In Minneapolis and in Minnesota, you saw what was happening with Damar Hamlin. Are you seeing an uptick in your city of people wanting to learn CPR, and are you championing that cause?
It happens very, very frequently in our medical field, and a lot of people die from it. But it takes usually a very public figure that can trigger then the interest for people to learn CPR. And although this was a very unfortunate event, it was a wake-up call for our communities to basically think about what can we do better to have a few people, when we can, survive without any problems and respond to the very rare really event that we see very rarely with TV, for example, with the best tools that we have as a community. So we are training a lot. We're lucky here in Minnesota because we're one of the first states that we established CPR training at high schools. And we have public events all the time, every year, to learn CPR. The Mall of America, different organizations require it. So we have, and I hope others can do that in their states, a very extensive curriculum of how to train the most people that we can to recognize early, activate the team efficiently, and start CPR and maybe possibly use an AED successfully.
Dr. Yannopoulos, you and Dr. Iyer were classmates together, and maybe this ECMO truck that Dr. Yannopoulos has developed, we can bring here to Buffalo, Dr. Iyer.
I have to give kudos to Demetrius, and we've known each other for 15, 16 years, and I saw him at the initial stages of the concept when he was still doing resuscitation science as his research interest, to where we've seen this in the last couple of years. When you think about the amount of time and resources, and Demetri is very humble, in the early days of the ECMO truck, he was the one manning the ECMO truck almost every day, him and his fellow Jason Bartos. So the commitment that it has taken to bring this field forward is enormous. What it is going to take this level of science that he's developing and translate it across communities is not going to be trivial. It's going to need a lot of support from the community organizations, from the state governments, and from the federal government. But I think this is a huge endeavor. We need to learn how to do CPR. We need to teach that. We need to move forward so our statistics for survival from cardiac arrest are not as dismal as they are right now.
And I would suspect, and I need to listen to what I'm saying, if you feel like you have a heart issue or there's a problem, you need to take action. You can't sit by and just write it off.
I think we've said this all the time. I think if you have a family history of heart disease, or you know you have a personal heart problem, or you think you may have one, talk to your primary doctor, see a cardiologist, make sure you get the attention that you deserve.
I want to thank all of our guests for being here today. It's been an amazing discussion about CPR, and we're going to wrap the program. For those of you who have not yet seen Damar Hamlin's message to the community, we want to share it with you. His positive message encouraging progress, and I'm sure as his doctors will confirm, his life-saving care was miraculous. And as his heart stopped, we all watched and prayed for his recovery. Now, to all of those who are present and all those involved in his care, we thank you, who held his heart and his life in your thoughts. So while he was in Cincinnati, and we encourage all of you to learn CPR and take a look at this inspirational video from Damar Hamlin.
Now that my brothers has closed out a strong winning season, as I continue to make so much progress recovering, I think it's finally a good time to share a few things. I think it was important for me to wait and speak publicly at the right time, as it was just a lot to process within my own self, mentally, physically, even spiritually. It's just been a lot to process, but I can't tell you how appreciative I am of all the love, all the support, and everything that's just been coming in my way. What happened to me on Monday Night Football, I feel is a direct example of God using me as a vessel to share my passion and my love directly from my heart with the entire world. And I'm able to give it back to kids and communities all across the world who need it the most. And that's always been my dream. That's always been what I stood for and what I will continue to stand for. And with that being said, I want to thank a few people who helped me most directly to get back to this moment to where I'm able to speak to you. The Bill's training, athletic, and medical staff, notably Nate, Denny, Joe Mika, Tabani, Dr. Bassan, Dr. White, Dr. Kim, Dr. Mark Feinberg, Joe Collins, Dr. Daz, Marissa, Dr. Musio, Corey Reblin, and last but not least, I can't forget Kels. The University of Cincinnati Medical Center, starting with Dr. Timothy Pritz, Dr. William Knight, and all the first responders who acted swiftly and skillfully to save my life. To all the medical personnel and healthcare providers at both Cincinnati Medical Center and Buffalo General Hospital, Dr. Jamie Nadler, Dr. Ken Snyder, Dr. Levy, and Dr. Chi Kim. To my mom and my dad, who are literally my anchors and my everything, who never left my side the entire time. To my little bro, who is my why, my reason why I strive to be my best self every day. And to all my family and friends who supported me in many ways during this time, whether it was showing up for visits or just a single text just to check on how I was doing. Thank you to everyone who donated in any type of way to the Chasing Them's Foundation. My mind is literally blown away from all the support. I don't even have the words to express the gratitude for the amount of support that was given into that. That was something that was started even way before I made it to the NFL. Something that was started small just to be able to affect my small community back at home at Keys Rocks. I just wanted to be able to play my role and do my part in my community as I ventured off and to chase my dreams of making the NFL. And you guys have just took that and blown it away, and I'm so excited for the things that I have planned in the future for these kids all across the country now. While I'm so thankful to everybody, I know that it isn't enough just to be thankful. This is just the beginning of the impact that I wanted to have on the world, and with God's guidance, I will continue to do wonderful and great things. I couldn't do this without any of the support and the love, and I can't wait to continue to take y'all on this journey with me.
Remember, learning CPR is very important for you and your families. Something you should learn, maybe even practice at home as well. You could save a loved one, whether it's in public or whether in the privacy of your own home. This is a very important topic, and CPR is certainly something we should all learn. And thanks to all of our guests for participating in these special conversations. So let's take a look. The American Heart Association CPR and First Aid Information Classes, write down this website. It's cpr.heart.org, and then you'll find the resources for the classes, cpr.heart.org. Things to know about CPR, you can go to this website, cdc.gov/heart disease and CPR. Now for AED and CPR online and in-person classes, the Red Cross is where you need to go at redcross.org, and you'll find their landing page for Take a Class and using the AED and what it is. The American Heart Association has certifications here in Western New York. Take a look at the website on your screen for more information. And the Emily Rose Foundation, you'll find them on social media, and everything that we just told you is going to be at buffalohealthyliving.com. Thanks for watching this special edition of your Hometown Health Connection Community Conversations. Remember, be the bystander that makes a difference.